everyone. Welcome to Transtastic Thursdays with Logan. Except it's actually Friday at like 4:30 because I just could not record the video yesterday. I had so much going on. It's nothing like terrible, but I picked up a new job this past week, like building furniture. In the evenings, I've been working till 9. And then, I commute like an hour and a half each way, and my like new vehicle I just bought, the heat went out in it. So I've been commuting with my dad, which has been chill, but I don't have any time to record the video. Like I couldn't even do it in my car like I'd been done before. So I'm gonna do it again here in my office. Today's topic, as everyone else has done this week, is discrimination and weird vibes based on our gender. I definitely have experienced this forever. A lot less now that I pass, but sometimes now it's different. So before I started T, that's kind of like the big thing, like without T and with T. So pre-T, I was seen as much more androgynous and like I was very like visibly queer, which I still think now I'm visibly queer, but for some reason people think I'm like a straight dude, which sucks, but whatever. I think before T, they saw me as like female, but I didn't really experience the same type of sexism that my like female peers did, just because, especially in like conversations, I seem to like take up a lot of space, a lot of time, and present my ideas a lot. So I was more like, I guess I was seen as like aggressive, but I didn't feel ever like silenced per se. I think sometimes I was like not taken seriously, but not like silenced. But I think that once I started T, that changed like a lot, especially at like my job. I feel like, as I said, I presented a lot of ideas before because I really like to be like innovative and like I'm a big problem solver. And so I think before T, I would do that, and like they would like let me talk, but they'd say that they'd like think about it or whatever, but it was just to get me to like shut up or like to make me feel better, and they wouldn't take it seriously. But I feel like now they put like too much trust in me some of the time. Not too much, but like way more than before. It's like if I come up with something, instead of having like a billion questions, being like, they don't question it, I guess, when maybe they should. Or like, I think it would be smart to do that across the board, but I think now it's like, oh, you want to do blank? Go do it and don't even talk to me about it. Like, not in a mean way, but just like, it's all yours. Which is nice, but definitely different now. In social spaces, since I pass as male, bathrooms are still the worst, because I don't use STP, but I still like obviously need to pee, and I use the guys' room because I don't feel comfortable occupying women's spaces for the sake of, well, not only myself, but I think it's just despicable to do that to women who may have been like victimized. So I'm not gonna go into like safe spaces and women be like, there's a dude in here, or like whatever. It's just not an option. So the guys' room has like so many of these like unwritten rules that it's almost funny because I just like could not catch on to them. So like in the guys' restroom, you cannot like look at anybody at all. Like I'm not even talking eye contact. I mean like you cannot even acknowledge that there's anyone else in this bathroom. And like God forbid you like smile at them. They think that that's just the end of the world. So you're supposed to just go in there. You can't look at yourself in a mirror. There is no one ever looking at themselves in the mirror unless they are like super flamingly gay and like fixing their hair or something. Other than that, like there might as well not be any mirrors, which sucks because that just seems just extremely toxic. But anyway, so that's a weird place because I'm trans and I would prefer, like, I'm not stealth, so I'm not, like, weird, that, like, I would be comfortable mostly if people knew I was trans and, like, going to the bathroom, even though it's, like, bad for my safety. But there's usually only one stall, and it's also not a norm to, like, wait for the stall because I guess men just don't have the time to waste. But they do, but they act like it's the worst thing. So anytime that you're in a bathroom, somebody comes in to, like, use the stall, instead of just, like, waiting for it, they just leave. I don't know what that's about, but, like, women's restrooms, there's, like, a big ass line out the door, and they, like, you're, like, chatting it up and, like, fixing your makeup. I don't even know. So bathrooms, that's one place. In general, that's really different. Sometimes people act weird or, like, change the way they act when they find out that I'm trans. But usually not too much. Like, I think I'm pretty chill about it, and just kind of, like, if they ask, I tell them. I'm super open about it. I think most of the time people, the, like, LGBT plus, like, poly aspect, that's one that people usually, like, get a little weird, because then they think that you're just, like, trying to have sex with them. They like, hear poly, and they're like, oh, you're definitely trying to sleep with me. Whereas before, people kind of thought that when I was, like, lesbian, like, girls would be like, oh, like, you're hitting on me all the time. But then, like, as I started transitioning, like, women don't think that. I don't think. They probably are more like, get away from me. But yeah, the poly thing, people act differently. They want us to talk about how starting tea has changed the way people view you. And I feel like I like calling tea, like, liquid privilege, because, you know, people took me more seriously. Just everything about it has changed socially. Like, you really get to see the socialization aspect of how people are supposed to perform their gender, and also, like, just how people treat you. I feel like they don't question me. I feel like I have a lot more, like, I don't know, relaxed encounters with people where it's just like, I don't know, not being held less accountable, but, like, I don't know, it's different. It's definitely different. I don't know how to put it into words, but it feels less stressful to exist every day, and, like, you can do something without being like, oh, is somebody going to think blank, blank, blank about it? Being on T has definitely changed the way people look at my relationship, because now we pass as, like, a straight couple, which sometimes feel miserable, but, like, that's the first time, like, probably in my life that that's ever happened. And it's nice because you get to, since I'm not stealth, I get to disclose it, like, when I want. And my girlfriend's, like, super great about, she told me this past week that she had, like, disclosed I was trans in conversation, like, with her boss. Not just, like, randomly, but, like, in the context of some conversations about that similar stuff. And that was cool, because I feel like sometimes it's really hard to feel like people just see me as, like, this straight dude, because I'm, like, a trans guy, and I very much identify as trans. Not just, I'm not like, oh, I'm, like, a dude, born a dude, and, like, that erases a lot of my experience, and me personally, I'm not comfortable with that, and I'm also definitely not straight, and so that's frustrating to feel like, at least before, I was, like, visibly queer, where I was like, oh, you're just, like, this lesbian. It still was wrong, but it was like, at least I was visibly queer. Now they're just like, oh, look at you, this straight person, which is hard because I've only occupied queer spaces the past like, I don't know, 6 years or so. Whatever. Finally, well, I do want to hit on really quickly that when you first come out as trans, like people say really, really offensive things that they don't mean to, but it's always like I think they're panicking, and like I'm always kind of panicking, but I'm always kind of panicking. So they will like be like, oh, like you can't even tell, or like, well, one, you can tell. It might like you can tell. I feel like I'm not far enough in my transition that you can definitely tell. Also, like, what does that even mean? Like, I'm not trying to reach this, like, magical, like, cis mask thing. So, that's not a compliment. Or they'll ask about, like, surgeries and, like, junk, which is just awkward. Like, that's offensive and awkward. Unless you're trying to sleep with me, which goes back to the poly thing, I guess. But otherwise, I'm like, why are you asking? Like, unless we're going to talk about yours too, like, why are we going to get to talk about mine? That's uncomfortable. And also, they treat me like I'm, like, I'm definitely a lot of people's, like, token trans friend. Where they'll be like, oh, I'll hear them, like, in a conversation, they'll be like, oh, like, here's Logan, and they know so much about blank, 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 and they just pull me in as, like, a resource, which sometimes is cool, sometimes it's just, like, you literally act like you know everything about trans stuff, but you have one trans friend, or, like, acquaintance, that you're still rude to, and so that's sometimes hard. Because some people use it as, like, I know this one person's experience, so I know all trans people. And that's just not the case. Like, even on this channel, you can, like, listen to people. We have very different stories and, like, identify very differently. And another thing, this is going to go on that, like, sex part of it, but a lot of things that I have found, if people have slept with, like, one trans guy, they think that they just, like, know how to do it, which just does not make sense, because you wouldn't do that unless, I don't know, cis guys might be like that, but you wouldn't sleep with one person and be like, now I know exactly what every person knows, like, what they want, which that sucks, because people assume that, like, because they've done that once, that they know everything there is to know, and I'm gonna like the same things, which is stupid. But I really only found that with guys. Girls who have, like, slept with trans guys are usually just in general more accommodating and, like, open to, like, other things. Guys are just like, oh, I've done that once, which is annoying, because I feel like before T, like, it was, I guess, it was expected for me to be complicated, like, sexually, as, like, a female. Presented as male, guys just assume that, like, I'm, like, very, I don't know, like, similar and, like, consistent, which isn't true. Let's see. I think that's about it. I faced, like, big discriminations, like, I'll tell one story real quick. Last year, right when I started T, my doctor was like, you need to start going to the gym. That'll really help things, blah, 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 for my, like, chest dysphoria. And so I went to Planet Fitness over in Whitehall. Shout out to Whitehall, because it's a hellhole. But went over to the one in Whitehall, because it was the one that was closest to me at the time. And I signed up online. I went in to pick up the membership, and I was like, oh, I'm trans. I need to know about, like, what kind of protections there are for me in the locker room. And I shit you not, this bitch ignored my question, and she was like, oh my gosh, you're queer? Like, we should hang out. I'm a lesbian, blah, 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 blah. And then, because she was identified as lesbian decided that it was in her authority to not only be racist, like I was her friend or something, be like, well, there's a lot of black people over here, and like they might feel uncomfortable. And then was like, it would probably be okay for you to use the men's area like once you like pass and once you like are seen as a male, but until then, like we're not gonna be able to let you do that. The first time I went in there, and I was like, wait a minute, I did not ask where you're gonna let me use the bathroom. I asked what kind of protection I would have in case somebody, because this is supposed to be like a judgment-free zone, right? So like, and I had heard things on the news about like Planet Fitness being really trans friendly. And I was so pissed off. I didn't ever go back to that gym, not once. I immediately the next day went to Clintonville and told them what had happened and told them that basically they didn't want me to be there like as a trans person because I didn't like, I had short hair. I like looked like a little boy, but I didn't have like a deep voice or anything, so I was androgynous. Probably looked more like lesbian, but also identified as trans. And somebody had told me like where I was allowed to pee, which I was like, is this North Carolina? Because this feels like North Carolina. I was genuinely upset. Went to the doctor, or called the doctor. What had happened? No. I went to the doctor after to get tea, was what had happened. No. Went to the doctor. They were like, okay, come back in 3 weeks. We're going to get you started on tea. After these tests come back, in the meantime, go get the membership. So I got the membership, went back to the doctor, told them what had happened, and she like lost her mind because she's like a trans like clinician, or she's not trans, but like that's what she only like sees trans people. And so we got to talk to like the lawyer, and there was a lot, but that was like actual discrimination. Like I've like not, I don't want to say actual, but like something that was going to affect my like daily routine of going to the gym, basically saying that this place wouldn't back me and wouldn't allow me to use the bathroom that I need to use in the locker room, which is already a vulnerable place as a trans person. So other than that, things have been exponentially better because, as expected, that liquid privilege is a weird space to grapple with. Now things are overall pretty good. My experience would be a lot different if I were like trans feminine, because for a billion reasons, but won't talk about that. Thanks for listening. Hopefully next week I actually post the video on Thursday. Thanks.